Hey guys, so this is my second video today, and this one is not going to be nearly as long as the other one. I'm just going to briefly be going over Carla and Ankh, and kind of giving you the rundown of their ride through the Japanese meta, as well as should you chase, should you not chase, what exactly should you expect from these units, from someone who has Kaigen both of them and uses them both. So, let's get right into it. So, Carla. This is the big limited unit, and when she came out, she was probably one of the few units that a lot of the people in Japan told me this is a unit worth using rainbow shards on. Do I still think she's worth using rainbow shards on now in the Japanese meta? No. However, Carla is very good. Now, the first thing you need to know about Carla is she does have the Desert Nenso to thank for some of her power. As you can see, this is just a basic Nenso. It doesn't have any limit breaks on it, and it's giving her 81 dex and 49 attack, as well as 7 speed to the Desert group and 5 speed from the base stats on it. That's pretty nuts. It's really good. It also gives her access to a Wind AoE, as well as that damage modifier buff that I have spoken so highly of on this channel before. If you don't know what it is, I suggest looking at the other Desert Wind video I did, or really just about any time I go over any desert support, including Hisham or Rahu, because I mention it all the time. Anyway, so a lot of you are probably wondering, wait a minute, Mal, why do you have Carla set on Valkyrie? So I run her as both a Valkyrie and a Rakshasa, and the reason I run her as Valkyrie is to abuse this, which is Ramsey's VCR, and basically what it does is every single time you get a kill, you get 10 more Pierce damage modifier, and it stacks up to 10 times. So if you kill 10 enemies with Carla, you can get an additional 100 Pierce modifier, which is really good. 100 Pierce modifier, that's insanely good. Now, you do have to kill a lot of things, but the piece of gear itself is pretty good, with 8 Pierce damage modifier, 6 speed, 15 max joules. I don't know what resistance that is off the top of my head, I'd have to look it up, but it's whatever. It's not the real reason you run the piece of gear. What this does is it gives her access to quicker AoEs, and because she has the Berserker reactive, she can easily gather jewels so she can consistently launch attacks. The idea is somewhat similar to the way you run Black Killer Masamune, where because the jewel costs are significantly lower than the Berserk class, you can make better use of the skills on the Valkyrie class than most other Valkyries can, because she never really has to gather jewels. Her base HP is absolutely nuts. Like, she just has a ton of HP, and she has a leader skill to boost it even higher, and I'll get into the leader skill in just a minute. But that is how I run her as a Valkyrie. Now, Rakshasa. So this is the way she is theoretically supposed to be run. So I'll just switch classes here to make this a bit easier. And I'll go ahead and throw some regen armor on. Maybe not even regen. Let's throw Tomba VCR on, because Berserkers don't even necessarily want regen, or rather they don't need regen. The only time you want regen armor on a Berserker is if you don't intend for them to be using their AoE. And because this is not Moa, who might want regen armor because Moa has a lot more to her kit than that 80 joule AoE that all Berserkers and Rakshas have. She doesn't have a ton of other great damage sources in her kits, and the ones she has are extremely high jewel cost. So the Rakshasa just feels clunky to me, and that's why I don't run it as often. However, you do get pretty good gear for this. The VCR that you get for the Desert Nenso is 10 speed, 1 jump, 15 fire modifier, and it looks like 50 stop resistance. These are all very good stats to have, although the stop resistance is kind of a slap in the face because you can't do like a pseudo black tier strategy. Not to say that it would work especially well for Carla, but it makes it harder to use. Let's see here. I need to pull that up right there. So, as you can see, her HP is absolutely bonkers as a Rakshasa. 7.3k HP. And I haven't even maxed Gate 4. Now, you're obviously not going to get that much HP in Global because I have some points into Gate 4. But that HP is going to go even higher, and she is basically an HP sponge that can do quite a bit of damage. as far as her damage relative to the rest of fire, she does not do high numbers. She just doesn't. What she can do is she can do moderately decent AoE numbers with Raksha, and that's about it. But the fact that she basically is a tank of sorts, maybe not damage reduction, but she has so much HP, she might as well. The real beauty of Carla actually comes from her leader skill, and this is the reason why she is such an insanely good unit and a good option to have. So the base leader skill is going to be 50% HP, 30% physical attack, and 20% wind exploit. So she basically has a 50% HP leader skill along with 50% worth of offensive stats against wind units. So as long as you're using a fire-based skill, you will benefit from that wind exploit. When you get her Kaigen leader skill, that 30% physical attack is going to change to 10% physical attack and 20% fire all damage, allowing you to easily run mixed physical attack and magic attack teams that can both benefit from that fire exploit, making it arguably the best leader skill in fire to date. There's not much else to say about this leader skill other than that it's just insanely strong. Is Carla a unit worth chasing? That depends. Fire is probably not in the best of states in global right now, if it's anything like how Fire looked back in Japan when Carla came out. She's definitely a good unit to have. If you want to effectively clear Desert Babel EX, you are going to need a Carla. That stage was basically designed to be soloed by Carla, and no other unit has a great time of doing it until you get better fire units. And even if your fire units can solo it, if you want the Sin from the Desert EX, I just don't see you getting it without Carla. It's probably possible. In fact, I'm sure someone has thought of a way to do it, but it's definitely not easy. Carla will definitely make your life easier in a lot of aspects just by having her. Now, the one thing I do want to say about Carla is I have done no testing on her Necromancer yet because she just got it. And who knows where this might lead us. Fire Necromancer is a very potent Necromancer, having access to Sure Hit as well as the ability to basically castrate bosses. However, that role does overlap with Dorothea, obviously, and Aaron, who has the Fire Necromancer too. I need to actually do some runs with this to see how it performs. I'm willing to bet Valkyrie is going to do better just because of the Ramsey VCR, but who can say for sure. Okay, on to the next unit. Now, I just kind of went over Ankh in my water team building video, but I am going to go over him again in case you skipped that and only wanted information on these two units. So, Ankh. How good is Ankh? Ankh is one of the best water units in the game. Hands down. I don't really see him running Pirate outside of very niche scenarios. I'd probably run Shenmei instead. Nobody runs Dark Cavalier on anything, really, with very few exceptions, and normally it's not because it's ideal, but because everything else is that bad. Or it's Zahar. But the Water Gun Lancer is going to be your best bet. However, unlike Gerald, I actually do not run the Snowball on Ankh. I actually run the Faust passive along with Overdrive. And the reason I do this is because it gives Ankh a ton of upfront pressure. He can do a lot of damage right out of the gate, and he doesn't have to wait 5 turns for that Snowball to ramp up. The other reason I do it is because not all of his skills are water-based, which means he doesn't always benefit from the fire exploit given from the Snowball, and not all of his skills are Pierce-based, which means he does not always benefit from the Pierce part of the Snowball. The one thing I will say is on longer maps, the Snowball might be a better option, simply because you are going to run out of skills on Ankh on a longer map. Ankh does not have a lot of skill casts. That's one of the reasons why you want his VCR, but I'll get into that in just a moment. But basically, when you auto-attack with him, he's going to be doing pierce damage. So the Snowball will let him do more damage if he normal attacks. However, let's be honest, you don't run Ankh just to poke people. You run Ankh to just obliterate someone, you know? You like, the whole thing about Ankh is he's someone who can do ridiculously high numbers without a charge up. That's his thing. He does insanely high numbers without a charge up. He can get a Pierce charge up if you choose to run the Pierce charge up armor, as I showed the other day on Tiona, which will give 100 Pierce, which will help whatever skills have the Pierce modifier on them, which is only about half of them. Now, for extra skills, I like to run Gerard's Lance, and the reason I call it Gerard's Lance is because the weapon ability is Thunder. It was clearly made for Gerard, but Ankh can run it because he shares the same job class. Maybe not exactly the same job, but you can kind of think of them as JEs. One is water-based, one is thunder-based. Ankh's JE is probably, or Ankh's job is probably not quite as good as Gerard's, but it definitely has differences that kind of make up for it. Where his AoE is not as large as Gerard's, Ankh's AoE is ranged, unlike Gerard's, so he can hit from farther away. Kind of like makes you feel like it has more of the gun side of the gun lance to it. But the AoE is not as big, so there's that. His VCR, however, gives a typeless water skill, which I believe has 2 casts, which does quite substantial damage. The VCR itself has 20 maximum joules, 8 speed, and I can't even remember what that is, but it might be 1 jump. It looks like jump to me. And plus 10 water damage modifier, which is obviously a big deal. Elemental damage modifier is really hard to come by, and even in Japan, there's a bunch of generic gears that might have it, but in general, the number isn't as high as 10, and the stats on it aren't as good as this piece of gear. I'm not necessarily saying this is the best piece of gear to run on Ankh, I'm just saying it is a good option to run on him, and it gives him an extra skill. Another option is the Ramsey VCR, which, if you're going to run the Ramsey VCR, I don't know if it even stacks with the his passive, but if it does, you might as well run them both and completely overdex on just hitting a ton of damage with your normal attack and whatever has the Pierce modifier. It's just another option. The good news is Ankh is pretty malleable. You can build him in several different ways if you'd like. This is just the way I like to run my Ankh. Is Ankh a chase unit? Well, Ankh is in the general pool, which means you will get Ankh eventually. I highly do not suggest chasing Ankh right out of the gate. So, that being said, do you want to make sure you get Ankh on your team? And the answer to that is yes. As soon as you are capable of getting him on your team, if you have the opportunity, you should. Do you want to spend like 10,000 gems on him? Probably not. Ankh absolutely needs level 75 to function as a unit. Like, he doesn't function as well at earlier levels like I feel like Gerard did. Like, Gerard, I functioned with Gerard pretty well for, like, at level 65 and 70 for the longest time in Japan. But Ankh really needs to get his 3rd job to get that overdrive in order to really abuse his kit. So you are going to need to get him to level 75 if you want to use them, so keep that in mind. And he's also very squishy before he gets his Gate 1 in Kaigen. So that's something else you want to keep in mind. Ankh had basically fallen out of favor in Japan before he got his Kaigen, simply because he just died. He just instantly died. He did a ton of damage, but he died. So do keep that in mind. He will be good for content right out of the gate. But he is going to fall off without Kaigen because his HP is going to be too low. And because he runs Overdrive and his HP is rather lackluster before Kaigen, at least from a melee unit's perspective, with such low defenses and little other ways to mitigate them, really, you do have to be careful using him. So, are these units worth fragging? Well, I kind of already alluded to Carla. She's definitely not going to be worth your rainbow frags, in my opinion. Keep your rainbow frags for a rainier day. Is she worth fire fragging? To 75, I'm going to say yes. I do think she is worth fire fragging to 75. She will be a great unit on your fire team. If you are just starting Takatame or you just starting the Alchemist Code, I highly suggest re-rolling for Carla because she is going to be able to carry you through a lot of content early on. She is basically going to be able to body anything that has been released to this date with relative ease. She's probably not quite as user-friendly as Soul is, unfortunately, but she does get the job done. She gets it done very well, and she's very consistent. Ankh, on the other hand, is he worth fragging? I'm going to have to say no, unless you're a whale. Um, simply put, he will get a hard quest eventually, and so will Carla. But I don't feel like Ankh is quite as meaningful at level 75 as Carla is. However, would you sustain a major loss if you decided to frag him to 75? And the answer to that is a little more mixed. If your water team is very lacking, a level 75 Ankh is going to do wonders for it. It's going to be doing more damage probably than any water unit in the meta currently, possibly by a substantial amount. I couldn't say exactly for sure because I never really played with Ankh back when he released, because I only got him up relatively recently. So I couldn't tell you the exact numbers because I didn't pay attention to them, because I was still a relatively new Japanese player back when he was released. In fact, Ankh, I think, was released on like the second or third week I played in Japan. So back then, I was still learning the game. That being said, both of them you can frag, and you won't necessarily say that you lost out on a bunch. Both of them will get hard quests in the future, but who knows how far away that is for global. So with those things in mind, good luck pulling tomorrow. I wish you the best of luck on your adventure through Desert Babel. Um, I have plenty of other unit videos on other Desert Babel units, and I will be doing a video on Neferti later because it does not look like she's going to be released on the initial week. So thanks for watching as always, guys. Good luck to you, and I'll see you next time.